Hello, and welcome to the second video in this series of videos on the SDR, which covers 100 kilohertz to 1.7 gigahertz. In this video, I'm going to talk about hooking up the SDR, getting SDR sharp, and installing it. When you get your SDR, it'll come with a USB cable, and when you plug it into your Windows computer, Windows is going to more than likely install the Windows driver. This driver will not work with SDR sharp, so if your Windows does install the Windows driver, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on which SDR you get. You'll have to fix the driver, which I'll show you to do here in just a moment. So at this point, with the SDR plugged in, you'll go and open your web browser and go to sdrsharp.com, and when the SDR Sharp webpage loads, you'll click this icon for software, and as you can see, the latest version as of the time I'm making this video is 1337. You'll scroll down and click on download, and I'm just going to open it with Windows Explorer. And this really isn't a folder, this is the actual zip file just showing me the contents. So we'll need to click on extract all files, and you can change this to anything you want. You can even extract it to a different hard drive or even a USB thumb drive if you so desire. I'm going to put it in my temp folder, and I'll just call it SDR Sharp, and click extract, and here it is. And we'll double click this SDR install folder to open it, and you'll see that there's only 3 files. You'll have to double click this install file to allow it to download the SDR Sharp and the necessary components. So we'll do that now. And it's already done. It doesn't take much time at all, so I'll press a key to close this window. And now we have an SDR Sharp folder, which we'll double click on to open. And before we start using SDR Sharp, we have to look at this driver. So you scroll all the way down and you will see a program called Zadig, which you'll double click to open. You'll be presented with a security window. You'll have to click yes, and that will bring Zadig up. You'll click on options and go to list all devices, and then you'll drop the menu down here, and as you can see, my SDR is listed here as bulk in interface, interface 0, and interface 1. Yours should be listed twice as well, depending on which one you go with. But do be aware that it might be called something different. It might be listed twice as RTL something or another, but hopefully it'll be just like this. But you'll select interface 0, and as you can see, I already have the WinUSB driver installed, but this button, instead of saying reinstall driver, should say install driver or replace driver, something to that effect. But you press your left mouse button and it will start to replace the driver. You'll be presented with a confirmation to do so, which you'll have to do, and if everything goes fine, it will say the driver was successfully installed. At that point, you will come back to Zadig and select interface 1, and do the exact same thing. Once the driver was successfully installed for both listings, you can close the dig. And at this point, you are ready to open SDR Sharp for the first time. We'll do that by double-clicking on it. And I will go ahead and maximize the window. Now, there are a few settings that you will need to do before you can listen to anything. Through some experimentation, this is the volume slider. By default it's set to 40 dB, which I know the broadcast will be too quiet. So I'm going to set mine to 45, which should allow you to hear anything that I'm listening to without being louder than my voice. You can move the slider even further if you wish. You can even max it out, whatever you prefer. Under source, you need to change it to the RTL-SDR USB listing. Once you do, you'll see that this tunes to 105.5 megahertz. I know in this area that's actually a country music radio station. But I'm going to change this to narrow FM because we're going to have to do a frequency correction. These SDRs all need to have this done, so it's very important to do so. In order to do it, you need to know what your local NOAA weather forecast frequency is, and you'll tune into that up here and do the adjustment, but we have to do a couple more settings here. So to do that with NOAA, it has to be on narrow FM, not wide FM. Step size, I like to set mine to 1 kilohertz, and be sure to check the box to enable correct IQ. Under audio, you can read about this online, but just in a nutshell, a lot of broadcasts for police and fire and EMS are now digital. So in order to decrypt a digital broadcast, you have to pipe the audio from SDR Sharp through a audio piping program to a program such as DSD Plus, which will decrypt it, and then you can hear the audio on your speakers. There are two programs to pipe audio with. One is called Virtual Audio Cable, which I own. The other one's a free program called VB Cable. Either one will do the job, but you would install it, and here on output you would select the one that you installed. In my case, it's line 1 virtual audio cable. I would suggest using MME over Windows Direct Sound, since MME is the latest thing. So we'll select that, and you do not want to filter audio. If you have filter audio enabled and you're, for instance, trying to decode a digital broadcast, well, decrypt it or whichever, but it'll come up as a garbled mess. You'll think it's encrypted when it really isn't. So we want that unchecked. And since we're talking about virtual audio cables, let me go over here to my little speaker. You'll right click it and go to recording devices, and you will see line 1 virtual audio cable here, and there's a couple things you need to do. You'll have to double click it. On the listen tab, you want to make sure you can listen to this device and it plays back through the default playback device. Under levels, you want to make sure you have it at 100. And under advanced, you want to set it to 2 channels, 16-bit, 48,000 hertz. And you would click apply and then OK. And your virtual audio cable is ready to go. As you can see right here, the sample rate's preset to 48,000, so they need to agree with each other. At this point, there's really no other settings that we need to mess with quite yet, but here under FFT display we'll be changing a couple of things here. So let me now go over to the config button here, configure, click it. Under device, it should just have one device. Mine is listed as generic RTL-2832U OEM. Sample rate, especially if you are needing to decode digital broadcasts, instead of using 2.4, you really need to use 1.024. Several forums that I follow have said that this is about the best setting, and I agree that it does work very well, so be sure to change this. For your police, your fire, your EMS type broadcasts, the sampling mode you'll want to leave on quadrature sampling. These 3 boxes that you can check, I never check these since I have an external antenna. I just use RF gain by itself, and it goes from 0 all the way to 49.6. You can fine-tune this to your needs. You might need to lower the slider if you have a lot of broadcasts in your very local area, because those strong signals can actually bleed out to other frequencies. Usually 20.7 is a good number. If you are trying to listen to something far away, you'll have to come here and move the slider up. And then here is frequency correction PPM. I already know that the magic number for mine is 33, but I'm going to leave it on 0 so I can show you what will happen when we go here to tune in the NOAA broadcast. You can put the, we'll leave this configure window open and just put it down here for now. As you can see, when you put the mouse pointer over the frequency readout, you'll have a red mark and a bluish purple mark. When it's red like this, that increases the number. When it's blue, that decreases the number. So knowing my local NOAA broadcast is 162.525 megahertz, 162.525 megahertz. We can now press start. Now, I'm going to temporarily back off the audio for just a moment here. We don't need to hear it. As you can see, there's your readout here, and down here is the waterfall. As you can see, this waterfall's moving kind of fast. Under the FFT display settings, if you go down to the bottom slider for speed, you'll see these gray marks to let you know the setting. By default, it's up on the 5th mark. I like to move this down to the 3rd mark, which makes this a little slower. The reason you want to do that is when you're looking for different broadcasts, this gives you a little bit more time to see the duration of the broadcast down here in the waterfall. Another thing you can do if you have an older computer is change the resolution from 4096 to 1024. This will free up some resources, but I have a fairly modern computer, so 4096 is perfectly fine for my needs. If you have a very high-end computer, you can increase it if you like. When I'm done with a section of settings, I like to hit the arrowhead to minimize it. So we've done FFT display. There's nothing to do with AGC. We've already done audio. These other ones come with SDR sharp by default. I don't use these for anything. So usually I have it going like this. So now, back to the frequency correction. As you can see, there's 4 sliders here on the right side. One of the first things we need to do is kind of look at this blue area through here, which seems to go up just past -70. So this range here, we don't really need to see. It's just going to be the same thing. To change this range from 0 to -130, we can change this 130 to -70 by lowering the slider for range. So we'll do that. And there's -70. Now, as you can see, since there's less noise to deal with, instead of showing a bunch of yellow, it's now a very dark blue in the background. I like to darken this just a little bit more. To do that, you'll go here to the contrast slider. You'll notice it's on the 5th mark from the bottom by default. I like to lower the slider down to the 4th mark right here, and as you can see, that makes it a bit darker, so your broadcasts stand out a bit better. I never do anything with the offset, but I do use the zoom quite a lot, especially here for doing a frequency correction. So we want to raise the zoom a little bit so we can see more of the peak of the broadcast. I'm going to go a little bit more here. There we go. So as you can see, the red line that tells you what you're actually tuned into is off to the right of the peak of the broadcast. If it's off to the right, this frequency correction ppm, you would increase the number. If it's on the left, you would decrease the number. So since mine's to the right, I need to increase it, and as I said, I already know the magic number's 33. As I'm adjusting this to 33, you'll see this line come into the middle of this peak, and you'll be able to hear the broadcast. So let me re-enable the audio here. I'll go back to 45 dB and start making the adjustment.
Tuesday, partly sunny. Highs in the upper 70s. Tuesday night, partly cloudy. Lows in the lower 60s.
And there we go.
Wednesday, partly sunny. High.
Now we're right in the middle of that band, and we are perfectly corrected. There are several sources online to find the frequencies for your local police, your fire, your EMS. One of the best ones, I think, is Radio Reference. They have a really good database of frequencies. Probably the only other thing we need to talk about here is squelch. There is a plugin called I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I think it's like Frequency Manager plus Scanner Metrics or something like that. The beauty of this plugin, it allows you to use your SDR like a police scanner, so you can have a range of frequencies and it'll scan these frequencies over and over again looking for activity. But you'll want to probably raise your squelch. It seems to me that 80 is a pretty good number, so I'm going to do that here just so I have it done. And let's listen to a local classic rock station. One of them in this area is 100.5, so we'll change this to 100.5. And as you can see with the numbers here, these numbers are gigahertz, these are megahertz, these are kilohertz, and these are hertz. So 100.5 megahertz is represented this way. And since these radio stations, they don't use narrow FM, which is why we're not hearing anything at the moment. They use wide FM. So I will enable wide FM. And let's reset our zoom here. Now, as you can see, the broadcast is, well, it's wide, which is why you have to do this. So I will now disable the mute so we can hear the broadcast. SDR Sharp, if the broadcast has any kind of information about what the station ID is and the song playing, it'll display in this black area here. So let's see. Oh, the boss. Yeah, I can't quite read what it is yet. I'm gonna go ahead and mute it. But that will pretty much cover it for this part of SDR Sharp. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to set this up to listen to shortwave broadcasts.